Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in EDH, and today we're looking at Krark-Sakashima partners. So this is a Is It partner deck that is using Krark the Thumbless and Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. So the deck is primarily built around Krark, and then Sakashima is just here to be a clone of Krark. So Sakashima is, you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of another creature you control, except it has its other abilities, and the legend rule doesn't apply, so it can become a non-legendary clone of Krark. So what does Krark do? Krark is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, flip a coin. If you lose the flip, return the spell to its owner's hand. If you win the flip, copy the spell, and you may choose new targets for the copy. So obviously, we want to be playing a boatload of instants and sorceries. We want those instants and sorceries to be as cheap as possible, and we want those instants and sorceries to either generate mana or draw cards. And preferably, we would also like abilities that trigger regardless of whether we actually resolve the instant or sorcery. So, one thing is that with Sakashima in play, you then get double triggers, so you can potentially bounce the card back to your hand / copy it. And when you have them both in play, you can win the first flip, copy it, and then lose the second flip and bounce it back to your hand to do it again. Or you can lose the first flip, bounce it back to your hand, and then still copy it off the second flip if you win it. So for our card draw, we've got a bunch of card draw spells like Ponder, Gitaxian Probe. This is really good as a 0 mana sorcery because we can just cast it, and then even if it bounces back to our hand, we just cast it again. We've got Frantic Search, same type of deal here. It's great that this is untapping lands, and if we copy it, we get to produce more mana than we put into it. We obviously have Rhystic Study and Mystic Remora, the One Ring, Wheel of Fortune, Archmage Emeritus. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. So this is going to draw us a card regardless of whether we actually resolve the instant or sorcery or not. And it's going to draw us a card for the copy off of the coin flip. And then Jeska's Will. Again, this is fantastic when we copy it. Produce tons of mana, exile multiple, up to 6 cards off the top of our deck. And then Birgi, because Birgi does Birgi things. Then we've got coin flipping synergy cards. So Krark's Thumb, if you would flip a coin, instead flip 2 coins and ignore 1. So you get to more control what the flip turns into depending on what you want to do. Tavern Scoundrel, whenever you win a coin flip, create 2 treasure tokens. It has another ability, but we don't care about that. And then Zunderspult, Eye of Wisdom, 5 mana, 1/4. At the beginning of combat on your turn, flip a coin until you lose a flip. Whenever a player wins a coin flip, draw a card. And in combination with Krark's Thumb, we have more chances of winning the flip. We also, again, it combos with Tavern Scoundrel, so we can keep flipping, generating more treasures. So there is a very much variance aspect of the deck, but we can reduce the variance with Sakashima copying Krark, with Krark's Thumb allowing us to choose which coin flip we want to have, with spells that we can cast where we don't care whether they're countered or not because we just recast them for free, etc., etc. Skipping combos for the time being. Bunch of counter spells, which is a little awkward when we have Krark in play because Krark can lose the flip and then bounce the counter spell back to our hand, which is really awkward. Also note that we can offer you can't refuse our own spells to get treasure tokens, which is also relevant with bouncing them back to our hand. We can also offer copies of things on the stack and then bounce things back to our hand as well. So that's another way to generate more treasures. Same deal with Swan Song. We can generate swans and then bounce the Swan Song back to our hand and bounce the original spell back to our hand. Then we've got a bunch of fast mana, including Treasonous Ogre, Stormkiln Artist to make treasures off of casting our spells, and Brightstone Ritual. Add red for each goblin in play, which is basically going to be Krark, although we may have some other goblins like Dockside Extortionist, and is also a ritual that is good to copy. Same thing with Rite of Flame. Bunch of Is It color lands, including Shatterskull Smashing, which is sometimes a spell. We've got Protection, so Deflecting Swat, Defense Grid, Overmaster. The next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn can't be countered and draw a card. Again, it's always going to be a little awkward when you lose the coin flip and this gets bounced back to your hand, but it's always good when you win the coin flip and then you get to double draw. And Conqueror's Flail, equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control. As long as Conqueror's Flail is attached to a creature, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. So this is the equipment version of Grand Abolisher, basically. Then we've got some ramp. Not a lot, but some, including Springleaf Drum. Some removal spells, Bolt, Red Blasts, Otawara, Shatterskull Smashing, Snap, Void Snare. A little bit of stacks in Cursed Totem because none of our stuff is activated creature abilities. Some sweepers in Blasphemous Act and Cyclonic Rift, and some tutors in Gamble, Recruiter, Mystical and Personal Tutor, Spellseeker, and Step Through for wizard cycling to go grab specific wizards in our deck. We've also got some clones, some more card draw cantrips over here, and Heat Shimmer to make token copies of stuff, which, again, this can maybe, like, not exactly go infinite with Dockside because you're never guaranteed that you're going to win every coin flip, but you can, like, Heat Shimmer a Dockside and then copy this and, like, maybe, like, bounce the Heat Shimmer back to your hand and produce tons of treasures. So this is another way of doing things. So some things to note, there aren't that many wizards in the deck, but Archmage Emeritus is a wizard, so that's useful to tutor for. And then we've got our combo section, which also includes Harmonic Prodigy, Dualcaster, and Veyrin, which are all wizards and are all combo pieces. So first of all, what can we do in this deck? Well, we can obviously do the all LED Breach Rain Freeze combo, which gets better when we're bouncing / copying things with Krark. We've also got Dualcaster Twin Flame and Heat Shimmer. So Dualcaster Twin Flame. So let's say we've got any creature in play. If we Twin Flame, we then hold priority, we cast Dualcaster Mage. Dualcaster copies Twin Flame, which copies Dualcaster, which copies Twin Flame, which copies Dualcaster, etc., etc., etc. So Heat Shimmer is basically also doing the same thing, but just for one more mana. Harmonic Prodigy, if an ability of a shaman or another wizard you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So Krark is a wizard, so it double triggers the Krark so that you get more coin flipping. It also double triggers Archmage Emeritus to draw more cards. You've also got Veyrin, Voice of Duality, so it's got Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +1. But also, if you casting or copying an instant or sorcery spell causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So obviously with Prodigy / Veyrin, we can double up on our Krark triggers and get more coin flips, which gives us more chances to bounce / copy our spells, and then we can go off that way. And then we've got just straight up actual storm cards besides Brain Freeze, like Grape Shot and Mind's Desire. Once we get to a certain point in the game, we're going to be casting a lot of spells and then copying / bouncing them back to our hands. So stuff like Grape Shot and Mind's Desire is actually really good. So for example, if we like Mind's Desire and then we bounce it back to our hand, but then we still get the storm trigger, so then we get to go off with Mind's Desire, then we can cast Mind's Desire again. Same thing with Grape Shot. And this can just continue over and over and over, generating either tons of value off of Krark copying things / bouncing them back to our hand, or actually going infinite. And of course, there's a bunch of combos in here that are not reliant on Krark, like Breach combos, like Dualcaster Mage, and so on. So main deal with this deck is we're gonna obviously want to get Krark into play most of the time, and especially want to get Sakashima into play copying it. And then we're gonna want to make a bunch of value off of playing and copying cheap spells that draw cards or generate more mana off of like ritual effects. Drawing tons of cards off of Archmage, off of cantrips that are getting copied and bounced and then replayed and copied again. All of these coin flipping synergy cards are of course great with what we're doing, and then we're going to eventually want to find one of these combos and breach our opponents out with Brain Freeze, Grape Shot, Mind's Desire, or double up on triggers with Harmonic Veyrin, or find Dualcaster plus Twin Flame / Heat Shimmer. And any which way we want to do it is going to copy a bunch of that. Also note that we can do things like Dualcaster can copy stuff besides just the copying things. So we can copy like bounce spells, we can copy other things that we're doing, other draw spells, other counter spells, other rituals if we want to, and so on. And that is going to be Krark and Sakashima.